I want to start us off with a story, right? A story of Khadija, smallholder farmer, low income, living in the rural areas of Tanzania. For the longest of time, Khadija has always longed to, own a mobile phone. But because of her society and the norms around her, this was not possible. But she manages to convince her husband to get her phone. So now, finally, Khadija has a phone. And this phone changes things in her life in ways you can never imagine. So firstly, Khadija can now put money in her phone. Money only she knows how much. Suddenly, Khadija is one click away from access to a loan, from access to credit. And this is money she can invest back into her business to earn more income for her and her family. Khadija has also realized that through this phone, she can get insurance. So what this phone has given Khadija is control. Control that she has never known in her life. Control to make decisions that matter to her. So, people start taking notice of Khadija's empowerment. And the women around the village come to Khadija for information. So they notice that Khadija farms differently. Khadija makes her own decision. So everyone is excited, wants to know what is this new thing that Khadija is doing. So Khadija tells them, my dear friends, have you heard of Shamba Pride? Have you heard of DigiCow? Have you heard of Koamana? Dear friends, have you heard of Sprout? So what this phone has given Khadija is capacity for prosperity. Khadija now is ready to cope. She's ready to adapt. And most importantly, she's ready to thrive. My dear friends and colleagues, there's no question that the technologies and innovations are changing the game of agricultural value chains, providing access to inputs, markets, finance, and weather information. The sector is abuzz with groundbreaking digital innovations that are changing how agricultural information is shared, services accessed, and produce marketed. Of the agricultural workforce in sub-Saharan Africa, 40 to 50% are women, whose productivity, according to research, is 20 to 30% less of men. This gap is attributed to the gender differences in access to productivity, resources, and services. Digital solutions have enormous potential to bridge this gender gap through faster, timely, and potentially universal reach for all users. Digitalization is poised to be an equalizer. But then again, is that the case? Not according to research that gives evidence that shows of the 33 million smallholder farmers, women constitute a dismal 25%. So what is imperative to ensure digitalization bridges gender gaps in agriculture? How can we create enabling ecosystems of innovators to boost women's digital access, participation in the digital economy, and visibility in data? How do we design digital solutions driven by a sound understanding of the gendered needs of the agricultural workforce? how do we bring the men on board in addressing restrictive gender norms? So this session this morning, we are going to explore some of the strategies that our partners have used to include gender in their work, how they put women farmers central to their journey. So on that note, I would like to introduce our presenter today, Vinny Bandari. Vinny is an associate partner in Dolberg's Mumbai office, and much of his work lies in the firm's agricultural and financial inclusion practice area. He specializes in blended human-centered design. Over the few years, Vinny has worked with agtechs, agribusinesses, state governments, ecosystem players, and has a deep understanding of the agricultural ecosystem in India. He is currently co-leading the AgriFin for Women program in India, working with two of the largest agtechs in India to drive gender lens in their products and services and channel strategies to increase the incomes of women smallholder farmers. Before bringing Vinny, I forgot to introduce myself. Sorry about that. Kasim Zan is my name. And I keep saying that I'm tasked to figure out women. So my main role at AgriFin is to lead our work on gender equality, to ensure inclusion in all of aspects of our program, from project development all the way to evaluation, working very closely with our partners. So please give a warm welcome to Vinny Bandari. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kasim. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Very excited to be here. We are a young program in India and very excited to share our learnings and learn from all of you about what we are doing in this beautiful city. I wanted to start by giving a quick snapshot of what Indian agriculture is about. Some of you might be familiar, but here are a few key things that I wanted to share with you. I'll talk about a few of these. I think if you look at the statistics around sort of employment supported by agriculture in India, it's about 43%. And that number has remained stubbornly high despite the growing economy, right? Most economies actually take people out of agriculture, but in India that number has remained roughly the same. Women form roughly half of that, right, when it comes to ag laborers, and about a third of that when it comes to cultivators. And these numbers are actually growing over the past decade or so, given that there is out-migration and so on. Women increasingly take a lot more of the agriculture responsibilities when it comes to their duties within the farming household. And I think the last bullet is the most exciting one, given sort of whatever is happening. The agtech space in India is actually super hot. We have 1,300 agtechs in the country today working on all types of issues, right? And we have one of them in the room as well, and I'll talk a little bit about them. But I think it's very, very exciting. There's a lot of potential in what they are doing. They're building a lot of new products, solutions, AI, blockchain, what name you, and are really putting sort of farmers at the forefront of what they are doing. With that context, we were given the task of say, hey, can we actually set up the AgriFin program in India about 15 or 16 months ago? First thing that you should take away is that we are actually working with two of the largest agtech startups in the country. I would say it's probably incorrect to call them startups at one point. Dehat is probably the fastest growing startup in the country. They are often said in the media to be the first agtech unicorn in India, which is a big thing overall. Samunati, which is the other partner that we are working with, is probably the largest non-banking financial corporation in the country and the largest ag lender outside of banks in the country. We, as AgriFin for Women in India, were really inspired by what they wanted us to do with this program with them, right? So with Dehat, it was actually very clear that they believed in the sort of the bundled approach overall. They said advisory is important, but we also want to take credit. We also want to do insurance. And the first time they said we want to do insurance, we were like, oh, I don't think this is a great idea. Insurance is always tricky, the hardest to actually sell. But they said, can we actually do something? We will innovate, right? And Dehat is here, Nikhil from Dehat is in the room, and they will talk a little bit about the innovation that they have been bringing and what we have been doing with them. And I'll also present what we have learned from them. Samunati, similarly, used a farmer producer organizations model, right? So they lend to farmer or producer organizations. These are a group of 200, 500 farmers who then lend to other members within the household, within the organization. They said, if you want to actually serve women farmers, why don't we set up a women village level entrepreneur channel for women farmers? Again, probably the hardest step, right? So you have to actually set up women entrepreneurs and then get them to actually serve women farmers, right? Again, given sort of the task at hand, we were super excited, but also sort of worried about the scale that was lying in front of us. So we said, let's actually start with sort of women farmers, right? And what do they actually need? So what you see on the page is sort of our starting point. As Dalberg, we love to start with hypothesis. We said, let's actually write down hypothesis of what is it that actually would work. So we said, let's make a 2x2 of where is it that women have the most agency and what can actually lead to a lot more sort of, and delta in incomes that they can see. We went to the field, did ethnographic work, did business modeling and so on, and then the two bundles you see that are highlighted in orange were the ones that came up again and again. Women said that when we actually go to the we go to the field and we have agency over what seeds, for instance, we actually apply. Right there at the dinner table conversations, we are able to discuss that with the families, with the husbands, with the male members, to actually see whether sort of the seeds that we use this time versus the previous time actually worked or not. Right? Cattle, which we are calling at, so the bundle around cattle, which we're calling as income enhancer, was this other big one. And I'm assuming that won't come as a surprise to many people in the room, given that cattle is a primary responsibility of women in agriculture households, at least in India, and I would say a number of other places around the world. And I think the other thing that we also learned, and the AgriFin program has shown this again and again, that the advisory that needs to be offered needs to go beyond just farming. Right? As in when you are actually serving women, we need to also talk about other stuff that is important to them. Right? It's about the household, it's about education, it's about other things that are top of mind for them. Right? So it's not just about seeds. That doesn't work. Right? And then secondly, as you would see on the quote above, it's not just advisory for the sake of advisory, right? It's here and now, right? They're like, hey, can someone come to the field right now with me and tell me what to do with the weeds that are growing, right? So how do we actually make the whole thing here and now? Only then we get their attention, right? So that's the first thing we learned. Then we said, okay, we now know what is it that women actually want. And again, before I get here, I should say that India is in itself vast. So this is a part of the country that we learn from, and different parts you go to might have different things, right? But then we said, okay, now that we have learned what is it that they want, how do you actually deliver them, right? Deliver these products and services to them. Right now, if you look at the typical sort of agriculture value chain in the country, there are agro dealers, right, who are a key player, and I'm assuming the same is the case here as well. And nearly all touch points are with male farmers of the household. So how do you actually start to deliver these products and services, right? So the first thing, like I said, with Samunati, the first thing that we had was like, can we set up women entrepreneurs for women farmers? And the theme that I'm picking up is stories is a big thing at ALEs. So I would love to tell you the story of Rama, who's sitting in the picture with the yellow jacket on top. She's a female entrepreneur with this organization called Frontier Markets. Think of Frontier Markets as Amazon, but assisted Amazon for last mile women connects, right? She's part of an SHG, very well respected and so on. We met her in a very small village close to Alwar in Rajasthan, and we were like, what would it actually take to serve women's needs, right? And when we were actually discussing, it was with her group, right? And we came to understand very quickly that members of the group prefer receiving information from her because she is trusted. She has been in the community and has deep relationships with all of them. She is the one who actually has the most exposure to technology, much like the story that Qasim shared us, right? She's on the app, she's actually has the exposure and gets others as well on tech. And then also provides hand-holding, right? Which is quite important for many of these women farmers, especially who have limited access to tech. But then the main thing that I wanted to share was that it's not just any women entrepreneur, right? Like if you look at the quote at the bottom, women entrepreneurs, when you go to the field, they will say, hey, we just have 2 or 3 hours in the day to do this, right? Because there are 50 other things that they are actually dealing with. So how do you take an entrepreneur who has just 2 to 3 hours in a day, set them up to give you climate resilient seeds, fertilizers, cattle feed, cattle additives in a model that's actually financially viable? It's just simply not possible, right? Like if you think of an agro dealer, the person is often just selling seeds or just selling seeds plus fertilizers. There's no one who's actually offering the whole thing because that's how business models are structured. So we said we need a model in which there's an entrepreneur, a woman entrepreneur, who's then backed by a parent company, right? Which is, say, for instance, a Dehat, right? Who's then supporting them to actually deliver these services. So today, she can deliver, she can do a demonstration for seeds because there's a company that's backing her. Tomorrow, if her community needs cattle feed or cattle additives, she can do that again because there's a company that's actually supporting her, right? And with this model, our projections say that she herself as an entrepreneur can earn up to say $1,000 to $2,000 a year, which is significant money for that household. And for the women farmers, farming households, can actually get to about 20-25% increase in household incomes. So we said, we've learned what is it that women actually need and aspire for? How do we actually deliver, right? But that's also still not enough, right? We still need to reimagine what it takes to actually deliver these services to women, right? So we started again from scratch and we said, let's look at the journey all over again. The very first step, as you see here, is that, and this is what we did for Dehat, so, and Nikhil will probably talk a little bit more about that. We said a female Dehat extension officer needs to approach them, right? Because as you see in the code below, women said, we don't even look eye to eye to a male stranger. So how do you even like get them in the fold? It's not like they don't want to, but there are social norms that are hindering them, right? So how do you actually get them? So our conversation was, Dehat was like, hey, we need to set up a women extension team, right? And get going. Then we say, okay, how do you actually involve them? When it comes to male farmers actually go to the agro dealer, right? And get their information from them. But now the agro dealer needs to come here. And you have to involve husbands within the job, within the conversation. Because women said, even when we get our, say, Aadhaar card, which is the national ID in India done, we still, even if it's a school, our husbands still accompany us, right? So even if to sort of break the mold and get them in, we still have to invite them into the fold. So the first few extension meetings or intro meetings that have to happen don't have to just target women, but also have to target the families completely, right? Which is what we then started to do. Then this is the same point that I just said, that it has to be pull advisory, right? Very tactical here and now that they want to do. Then you also need to go beyond sort of the immediate short-term needs and establish that trust, which comes to the point around how do you actually offer information around other stuff beyond agriculture. Once you have that, and now we've spent enough time, right, working with them, hand-holding them, ensuring there is trust and so on, that's when insurance starts to come in. Because there are lots of sort of beliefs that are, and lived experiences that sort of come in the way, right? Like if you go to any household, a rural household in the country today, you will realize that either they themselves or at least have heard of someone else within their community who have been duped of money because someone was offering a fancy scheme, right? And people are actually quite wary of that. There are also misconceptions, right? We talk to people and they're like, oh, I'm a landless, I'm a tenant farmer, for instance, and insurance is only for people who have land, right? And then our partner here said, hey, actually our insurance is nothing to do with whether you own land or not. We will give you a payout if your germination rate for a bag of seeds is less than 80%. And that's new, right? That's brand new. But all of that, you can't enter the market with that. You have to enter the market with a lot of the other stuff that we started saying. So now we've looked at sort of what is it that they wanted, how do we actually deliver them, what does the journey actually look like. But the last thing that I do want to share with you before sort of I give it back to Qasim is that there's a wide chasm between intentionality and actually execution. As AgriFin for Women in India, we would have spoken to at least 10 or 15 partners in the initial stages. Not a single one said that they don't want to do it. Every single organization said women farmers are interesting, it's a segment that we have not looked at before, there is potential and so on. But it takes a lot, right? There are competing priorities within the organization, right? There are 140 million farmers in India, right? And no single organization is even at that order of magnitude, right? They're operating at probably 100 scale times less. So there's such a large, untapped, easy, low-hanging fruit. Why would you move to women farmers, right? It's just pure business sense, right, for a lot of them. So there is a lot of like competing priorities that sort of come in the way. What we have learned is that if you offer the right technical assistance, which in my sort of head is like, how do you actually design this for women farmers and women in farming households? And you combine that with bridging gaps in the business model, right? That could be guarantees, that could be learning grants, that could be pilots and whatnot. We can nudge them over that chasm where people actually start to actively operate. Again, you will hear from Nikhil later on that they are already underway and actually making it. And the exciting part, as a lot of philanthropic capital wants to hear, there's a ton of leverage. Like early signs, even just early signs right now for a short pilot that we are trying to do, is that there is 3x leverage in just the next 6 months for the amount of money that's actually going into the pilot from this program side, from just one organization in just 1 year. Right? So imagine sort of the potential overall. So I will sort of rest my case here. I think very interesting. We are here to sort of share a quick, share learnings from you, from our program, and also learn from you, because like I said, we are very early. Please do reach out. Nikhil is here from Dehat and will share a lot more about what we have done. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vinny. Vinny just reminded me, the very first time my grandmother had an M-Pesa moment. So for the longest of time, my grandmother managed to convince us that she could not read or write. So these were early M-Pesa days. So I wanted to try it with her. She couldn't read and write, so I felt my money was safe. So I visit her one day, and I send her 500 shillings, that is $5, approximately $5. Immediately she received that message, she looks at me and smiled. I got curious. So the whole time my grandmother avoided conversations with me, right? So I managed to get her down. Hey, grandmother, I saw what you did. I saw you see me, see you reading the message. I thought you could not read or write. So this is what she told me. Who told you that I could not read or write? But it is what you've been telling us all along. No, I just read selected texts. That is the moment I knew technology can really transform lives. For the next activity, I'd like to bring in Lisa. She will introduce herself and give the next steps. Thank you. Please.
Thanks, Kasim. And it's so great to be here with my new hat on. 3 months ago, I joined the Gates Foundation. As many of you know, I spent the last 7 years with working with Agrifin, and it's such a thrill to be here as a participant and not as an organizer. But I did get roped in by Kasim to help with a small group activity. And one of the things we've learned in doing these Agrifin events over the years is that, the brain trust is in the room. It's not about all the people sitting up on the panel. It's about the people sitting in the audience. So we wanted to make sure we had an activity where we could hear from you and we could engage you, and we could also ask for some of you to bring your tip-top acting skills to the game. What we're going to be doing in this activity is very soon, I think Delapo is going to be Delapo and team are going to be putting a series of just small sort of personas on the table. As you guys know, the core of Agrifin, in my experience with Agrifin, the core of Agrifin is to start with the farmer at the center and to understand who is that farmer that we're trying to serve. One of the things I'm most proud of what Agrifin has done is the ability to drive technology solutions that work for women, and what Vineet is leading in India is so important, because these organizations are huge, but they're not reaching a lot of women, and there are a lot of challenges. So this is a critical part of what we do, is to understand understand who the women are. So some of these personas that you're going to be getting on your table on colored sheets are going to be personas about women that we've worked with, and you'll see kind of what their interests are and their challenges are in the market. So some of you guys are going to get to be women farmers. And then the other part of AgriFin that's really important is what Roger Voorhees talked about. It's that bundling of services. Bundling of services doesn't happen by itself. It really happens through partnerships. So, there are a lot of organizations who are good at digital, but they're not good at seed systems, or they're good at seed systems, but they're not good at financial services. So developing partnerships to drive those bundles is the other part of what really makes AgriFin successful. And a lot of you who deliver those services are here in the room, and you're working with women and figuring out how to work with women. So 3 other personas are here. One of them is for a commercial bank, trying to work with women. One of them is with a women's cooperative, working with women but trying to figure out technology. And the other one is with a really cool ag tech company that just can't figure out why women aren't walking through the door. So, so all of you guys are going to get a persona. I'd like for you at your tables, I think the women farmer group, since we have 9 tables, there probably are going to be 2 tables that will see the same persona for Mercy. And there are going to be 2 tables that will see the same persona for Rose. And then the bank, anyway, you'll see what your persona is. We're going to ask you for the next 20 minutes to discuss that persona and talk about the opportunities and the challenges that are presented, the potential for partnership, how digital technology can accelerate the path for all of these personas. And then we're going to ask for each of your table groups to propose one awesome representative, one passionate representative of your persona to come on up here to the stage, and we'll have a conversation.